Today we're going to start work on my 1966 Bridgestone 175 dual twin. This is a bike I picked up a few years ago. It sat for a long time, locked up engine, rusty gas tank, rotten tires, the whole thing. I've done quite a bit of work to it over the last few years and put several miles on it. I do have some videos of it running and riding. Ran really nice, started well, but it's time to get into the center seal of the engine. One day I was riding and I kind of lost most of the compression and starts hard, and I know this center seal from other bikes I've done is usually the culprit between the two pistons. Then they lose that seal, so I do have a machine shop nearby that will press the crank apart. I have gone through and replaced all the other seals in the rotary valve, the one that sucks the transmission oil, that's gone out already. These O-rings and pretty much anything else that I could replace has been replaced. This one's had new tires. The gas tank, spent a lot of time getting that de-rusted. The new tires, tubes, headlight, taillight, everything works. It shifts nice. The sport shifter works great. The neutral light works. The indicator light works. Must be 5,700 miles on this one. Oil tank was clean. I had to get the new hoses from the old tank to this tank. I replaced all that stuff. Had a battery in it, chain, sprockets, that was all locked up. It's all been cleaned up, ready to go. Titled, got my collector plates on there. This bike is in okay shape. I do like this patina on them. Maybe someday I'll get them chromed and restored and painted, but for now, this is probably my favorite bike to ride. It runs good up to about 60, 65, maybe on a good day. Maybe touch upper 60s, but I'm not the smallest guy, so I'm a little bit of wind resistance. But like I said, starts, runs, ride, brakes, everything has been great, but I just want to get it going again to get it back to where it was. So I want to make a little documentation on this, show my progress. I'm going to start out moving some of the accessories. Most of the stuff has been off a few times, so it's fairly loose. When I first started working on this, it was very corroded and very hard to get these screws loose and everything, because I know it sat for a solid 30 years before I got a hold of it, probably 2-3 years ago. So get the side covers off, get the exhaust off. These little boots, I bought these online. A guy remakes those. They still, after 3 or 4 years, and they've been really held up nicely. They don't get hot and gooey or anything like I've heard some people had problems with. Also, I mentioned on this motor, I do have an issue with the kickstart doesn't always engage. See, like right now, it turns over nice, but then it'll skip. So I really have to keep track of the little ratcheting mechanism in there. That gets really annoying when you're trying to take off from a gas station. Everybody's looking at you, and all of a sudden, pretend like the bike doesn't start like it will as soon as it catches a tooth. Now it is January. It's not real warm in my shop. Try to be a little careful with these. But I suppose I can just stay up there. Plugs for my carburetors. These have had issues with the cables. They're not in the greatest shape. I left it in the ultrasonic a little too long one time, so my carburetors are a little discolored. But they seem to run and ride just fine. loosen these up and get them out of the way. I'm not gonna really disconnect much because once I flip all this stuff out of the way and just slide the engine out and split it apart. This one splits like this, so it is a little bit of a pain to get the gear set and everything back together and the shift forks on, but I'll show you that later in the video too. But I have, had these off already because I had to work on the clutch. Like I said, I did put seals in this one and exhaust seals and that kind of stuff. So everything else has been tightened up as much as I could without having to physically split the engine case. But it's time because I want to ride this one again. Because like I said, this is my go-to rider. 20, 25 miles. Great as long as you're not on an interstate. Like I said, they cruise so nice between 55 and 60 miles an hour. It's like I said, it's my favorite little bike to ride. I'll deal with that one later. That one. These were a little bit loose from vibrating. I know it's been leaked a little bit, but I have had issues with the studs wanting to strip out of the heads. And I've got to just run around once in a while and tighten them up a little bit and wreck the threads because they're so fine. And there we go. I know how great they were to begin with. Gaskets out of here. We'll see more right. I pull the exhaust. Should be a 14 mil. Try and do the same on the other side. So once exhaust is out of the way, it really seems to make it easier. Probably also worth mentioning, these little blocks, they're actually the stand that's supposed to weld to the frame. So the center stand goes down and welded inside there, And I had an issue with those breaking off. They actually had this engine out before and tack welded them back together. Try to take it easy and they still broke off again, so made a little changes to my welder and see if I could do a little better job on that one. Bring it around the other side just to kind of show you. Put the foot peg off already. My side covers were loose. I had to unhook the battery before I stored it. These side covers are getting in rough shape. Trying to be a little careful with them. Also, when I got this bike, I got a rebuild kit for the petcock because that has a little screen and a gasket. The guy sells those on eBay for like 40 bucks, so that was well worth it. Not to drip gas all over. All my oil pump lines, everything kind of leaks a little bit, but I do still use the oil pump. It seems to work fine. Haven't had any issues yet. I just probably put some new ones on here when I put this back together. For some reason that's a 9mm. All weird sizes. It's my 8. Right there. Right off like that. I'll leave the other oil lines on. This is the one I have to plug up when I take it off there. But in the meantime, that will dump all over the place. Pop these off. I'll take my chain guard off. Shifter. Because in the meantime, not in a good spot there. So happens my master link was right up on top. Super handy. Not that I don't lose it, which I've done before. What size is that? 12? There's one thing, they do have some odd sizes on here from 8, 9, 10, 11. So, bike is 56 years old, so I'm sure there's some screws that have been changed over time. Easier to ratchet. This should slide right off. Screw back in. I believe this guard has to come off. I always keep my sport shifter in the 5-speed version. Because, like I said, I don't like to sit in traffic very much. This with switch 5th gear had a little bit more power because if you cruise along at 60, you slow down, it's hard to pick speed up again, like for a turning car or for traffic or that kind of sort of thing. So a dead stop, it's really nice, but like I said, I don't like to lose my momentum. I hook my oil pump. That should unscrew out of the block. Get that out of the way. Like I said, all this stuff will just kind of hang once I pull the back 2 motor mounts, and then these 8 bolts. And if I gotta take the seat off, unhook the rectifier, because there's 3 wires I hooked up to there, then this should come all loose. I can leave the oil tank and the gas tank on for now, and I may pull some of the side covers off before I get it on the ground, but it's getting pretty close. A little more progress. I did get the battery unhooked, the clutch unhooked. So there's my rectifier area because the wires that come out of the generator go up there. There's only 3 wires and then 2 plug out of the harness, color per color. It's really straightforward. Now, probably try to take the head off. Sometimes it slides out of the frame easier. Plus, I'm curious to see what these pistons look like. If I should put new ones in. I have 1 new one, but I had to use my other new one on another bike project, and I don't know if I can find another one, but I'll probably have 2 months to look for it because the machine shop that I use works in snowmobiles, and wintertime they do a lot of cranks, so that's last time I think it took me 6 weeks. I took one in the summertime and had it done in 3 days. But I want this running by the summertime, which is a long way away. But I had a little bit of time, and it's been up on the lift for 2 months already. Pulled the oil out because I want to pull the side cover off while it's still on the bike, just because I don't have a good engine stand to work on this stuff. These head bolts, I've had studs pull out on the other 175 project that I had that I made a video about, and I ended up splitting that engine 3 times. That's why this one's taken so long for me to get Ambition to pull apart, because after the 3rd time it was kind of disheartening. This should make it. My wires didn't get stuck in there. Washers. Now see, this one ran pretty well, nice and clean. Get in there. I don't know how dark it is inside the piston. This should have a flashlight for you, which I don't have. But you get the point. No hole in the piston. These were pretty tight. Ran pretty good. I'll pull the other one out and you'll see where we're at. Continuing on. Pull side cover, get the heads off. Try and keep some of these screws in the correct spots. But if I don't, it's not that big of a deal. How tight is that? Gentle. That side here should look pretty good. The fiber washer and the clutch. So the inside of my cylinders were looking pretty decent. They're not scarred up, but they're the chrome bores. Might just leave those pistons in it. But yeah, the big thing is getting clutch, gear all apart and retimed again, which no problem. Then my Kickstarter, I gotta figure out why I'm missing a tooth in there or the return. Haven't figured out yet. I have to make a new gasket for this. Alright, now for the other side. Now with the oil pump, you do have the line disconnected, just kind of hanging out up there. But you gotta take a whole bunch of screws out here to get, first of all, the cover off, and then there's oil pump and the screws behind there, so you'll kind of see as I start pulling some of these side cover screws out. There we go. It gets a little oily. Now the whole oil pump housing, and pull the screw. This screw. Two little ones. Screwdriver, screwdriver. It's an oil leak out of here because it should be full around that gear. Catch some of that. twist. Oil should have came out. I don't like screwing in these too much. They should have a washer on both sides. Just because I know I have to get them primed when I put it back together. Some of these just randomly back where they belong. And that's the oil pump gear, and then I said there's just some gear oil that stays in there, and it runs around pretty. It stays pretty good. Behind this gear would be the rotary valve, and there's a seal right inside there that I don't know if I replaced on this one yet or not, but I wasn't having any issues with the cylinders running lean or dry or anything like that, but I do have new ones. Oh. There, that's seal in there. I'll just put a new one in anyway. It looks in pretty good shape, but there is a double lip in there, and I usually see where the seal is in there crooked or gets a little bit goofy. They are an odd size and they're kind of hard to get a hold of, but now the rotary valve should say, since it's the left side, you see an L right there lined up with that pin, and it's the right, because this is a universal part, left to right side, but they're just off by a tooth, so that L is kind of hard to see, but always make sure the orientation looks right. Thought I had a pen. Right out. Left side. Yeah. This is just made out of fiber. Just moved, but it kind of made a little suction. I get my fingers in there. Without wrecking it. There. Nothing too dramatic. Back to the pile. And this is where the cylinder actually feeds the fuel in there. This should be all nice and smooth. This is part of where my cases are going to come together and come apart. This is my wiring I had to add on for the neutral switch that time, and that fifth gear lever. Make sure that all works. But like I said, I've been in there and done all that work already. Now should be some bolts on the other side. Well, take the crank gear off This is left-handed thread, so make sure do it the right way because it strips out real easily. What do I have on here? That's too big. 21. That's better. Let's give it a little pop. There. Now there's a little locking washer. If I can get it out of there. Come on. There it goes. Now next step, getting that gear off, which I haven't found a good way to do it other than just rocking it with a pry bar and screwdriver. I may spare you getting after it because you don't want to damage the cover at all. You don't want to damage the gears at all. This one came right off. Now there is a locator pin that you got to watch real close because that's going to go on the crankshaft. It's hard to tell, but there is a tiny little, I don't know if I'm focused on there well enough. There's a tiny locator circle on that one that goes with that one. So that's something to keep track of when putting all this back together. That's going to make sure your left side piston's top dead center. Now this one I have replaced this seal. That's probably why it came off easily because I took that off probably 2 years ago because it was sucking the transmission oil into the crankcase and then just the right cylinder would smoke and yeah, you know the rest. Like I said, I've done a lot of work to this bike already because it was locked up when I got it, and actually this was a spare engine that was unknown that was just sitting on the floor in a barn, and we put it in, it was loose, and it's been a really good runner other than the kickstart would slip once in a while. I put a couple gaskets in there or seals in there, but now it's time to get the crank out and replace that seal because this one day I decided didn't want to idle, didn't want to start, and I know that's just a telltale sign of a center seal because I don't really spark and anything else is good. Come on. Okay, work this off there. A little locator pin under here too. Work it off there. Like I said, the seal is actually hard to come by because it's a double lip seal. I'll probably end up reusing that one because that was in really good shape. As long as it works, I'm sticking with it. This is the part of the oiler that the line comes from the other side from the oil pump, so that's another thing that we had to take the generator off and replace that line because you don't want to lose that. But here's our rotary valve we talked about before. There is locator pins. Like I said, this is a common number, but since this is on the left side of the engine, it's going to locate with the L right there. If I can get the seal. Yeah, both hands. I don't know how guys do that with one hand. I don't want to chip this because it's just fiber. But it's hard to tell with this collar on there. But this left thing, there's a locator pin. Oh, I hate that when I take them apart. You can't really see it real well. But like I said, there's that locator pin that's on the crankshaft. So this is on the left side. The L on there lines up with that. It's just a little bit goofy because this collar's on here. You can't see it, it covers it up. But when it goes together, a lot easier than it comes apart. So now I'll take this screw out there because this is the one that kind of, but when I do split the cases apart, these can all kind of stay in there. Might get my impact. Yep, that one's never been out, but let's see what these cylinders, these will just pop off. So now, head gaskets are on there. Just slide that one off. These pistons are going to be in really good shape. And the bores, that chrome bore is in really good shape on these too. I'll just look for any nicks or anything, but I mean there's no boring and oversizing. I mean they are what they are. They're 175 for life. It's got really good gaskets on there. I have new ones. The left and right is pretty simple on these because they're just gonna go more stuck. I don't want to hurt any fins. Really get my rubber mallet right now. Yeah, good enough for now. All right, I just tapped this one loose, my wiring. So it's trying to wrap a little bit of paper towels around the piston so it doesn't bounce. There again. This bore looks in really good shape. I mean, this hasn't been hot, scored, anything. I mean, this is what you want to find, and these are hard to come by. Because what I found, if the engines are locked up over time, this chrome board just deteriorates and they lock up solid. But before I take that off, and these rings have nice little locator pins in them. You know, it's a 2-ring thing. I mean, this piston's in really nice shape. I mean, there's no scoring or scratches or anything, and pistons and rings are hard to come by. So these are probably going back in, but a top end is easy enough to replace when it's in the bike. So I don't want to waste pistons if I don't absolutely have to. So I just kind of wrap this up. So I'll end up flipping the engine over. Take that side screw out. You know, the engine does just split right across. I can leave the sprocket on there, and the top lifts off. So that's actually pretty nice. The generator can stay for now. It's a matter of all the bolts underneath, and they're all numbered. So when you put them back on, there's a certain torque sequence that take all these, you know, 8s, 10s, 14s, 12s out, take those out, and it splits apart. So I just take a box, I just draw an outline of this, I number them all, and I just poke holes in the same pattern. So when I go back together, slides together, put the bolts back in there, torque them. Like I said, you can't even see the numbers on here. I mean, you see there's a 4 there and a 6 there. Some I can't find. I mean, this is a 1, but I think there's like 13 total. Alright. Pop this out. Remember, I have this one. There's a plate in the transmission that kind of holds that together. If I flip this up now, I got my box with my little template down there, so I'm just gonna smack these loose and hopefully pull the piston wrist pins out and should be able to get this case apart and see what that crank seal looks like. Unfortunately, this is the only way to check it out. It seems like a lot of work. What do you think? Now there's a sequence taking these apart, other than don't snap off. Take these out and just push them through. This one goes to the starter. This will go in the middle. These aren't crusty or anything. I've had a part where they're all goopy. You can see that they had some type of thread sealer on a lot of these. I don't know if that's their form of Loctite or what. Grab a few more here. Alright, got all the bolts out of the bottom. Ready to split the case on this one. So I popped it just a little bit, so it's just a little bit loose there. Oh yeah, I did take the pistons out, the wrist pins, just slid them out, set them inside the cylinder so they go back in the same place. Now this, if I remember right, it's just that shifter fork that gets in the way. And that's it. I never have a good place to put this. Try to make room. Now, here's another issue. This is the old version. You can see my seal in there. It's hard to tell, but the spring is a part in there, I can tell. But this is the old style bearing with the seal or the groove in there. And I had issues with my other engine. There's no locator pins or collars or anything in here. They're just located with the bearings inside of the case here. So this is an older engine, a real early one. And these bearings are unattainable now. And I had an issue. I had the last time put together. I have this seal, but it sucked itself back into the webbing on the last engine I did. I had to take it all back apart and do it all over again, so this is kind of a bummer. I was hoping this was a newer engine. But the rest of the stuff looks good and clear. You know, there's no major wear on any of this stuff. It's never been apart, so I'm going to pull that crank and I'm going to take that over to the machine guy. Hopefully in a few weeks you press that apart, put that seal in there, because most of the time even these bearings, the ones on the crank aren't available, these needle bearings. I had the wrist pin bearings, but that stuff was all super nice and tight. It's just the seal I think fails. So hopefully next time it can have it back in the machine shop and put it back together. Welcome back. It's been about 4 months since I took this crankshaft out and sent it to the machine shop to have this seal replaced. Of course, it's snowmobile season, so they're busy. But in the meantime, I did fix a few little things. Big one was my Kickstarter has been a little bit funny over the years. This little ear had a bad spring. Actually, the spring was all smashed in there, so I just pulled out another engine. I could have just stretched it out, but I had the pieces. I didn't have to take it apart very far. There was just a little clip in here. Pulled that out, slid that over. So that was a nice thing, because this Kickstarter wouldn't catch very often. But yeah, this whole thing, I left the original old bearing in. All I did was replace the old style seal because I have the old style crank, but that doesn't have the locator pins, which I had a problem with my last engine. I just kept this one exactly the same as it was because this was a really good running, really smooth, really nice shifting one. So all my gears were good. Got my cases cleaned up. I had the seal around here that we replaced. This is the one that was bad. So when this blew out in the center, of course, air is going to get by. Center part was cracked out, so that could have been going for quite a while. So my next step is have this centered out in here, so I'm not touching either web. I'll use Honda Bond around the outside. I'll set my cases together. Like I said, this stuff all pretty much stayed the same. My gears, bearings, everything was good. So I'll grab my stuff, make sure my surfaces are clean again. It's a little bit funny to try and get this lined up and this lined up. I kept the gear set in the top case this time. Hopefully that stays in there because the last one had two other gears in there, and that was a big pain to get lined up on here. So this way I should only have to do one. Hopefully everything was good. It keeps my 5th gear shaft where it's supposed to be, wherever that was. Oh, it's in this one. Yeah, either way, when I get together, I'll figure it out. Because I had redone my neutral light, had that stuff all soldered back on, shaft there, so we'll see how it goes. Here's that sealer Honda Bond I'm going to use. Stuff is a little bit runny. Shouldn't take much, but end up with strings everywhere. Looking good down there for sure. Need a little more right here. Until it's already starting to get tacky. It's a nice warm day, so it's definitely. I have the cap. Would be nice, but. Hopefully got this in here spaced out, not hitting the webs, and they're nice and square. Shouldn't have any issues. Gears. It's getting close. That should drop right in. Back is pretty good. That pin is lining up, but just to get over the top. Isn't always the easiest. Why aren't you going down? There, it's settled in. So we should have a good seal between there, the shaft, up and around. Settle in nice here. I'll flip the whole thing over, start putting bolts in. Now I got my cases started, all the bolts. There is a sequence. All these numbers are by the bolts except for a couple of them. There's some 14 mils and some 10 mils. So the 10 mils are 60 inch-pounds. And the bigger headed bolts with 14s are 120. So I just kind of snug them all up by hand. I'll just kind of go through and start at 30, 60, 90, and just kind of go through each one. But like I said, some of these aren't quite numbered as much as you can see, but I just assume that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, just wants you to, I can probably bump it up here a little bit. I'll start at 60 with these because they're already finger tight, and see that's not much. Down here, 7, 8, there's a 9 down here. Smaller ones are supposed to go to 60, so I'll start at like 40. And so that's 10, 11, 12, 13, I think 14, so I'll go 10, 11, 12, it's 13. No, I just figured this one's 14. I'm going to go up to 50 pounds on these. Actually, I'm going to go to 100 on the other ones. One, 2, 3. Oh. 3. I can't count. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 55 and get almost there, but not quite. 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. I'm up to 120 on the big ones. These bolts all feel pretty good. I had issues with other motors. The head studs came out, but these were all like brand new, real nice. This engine wasn't corroded at all, so I'm pretty confident with this one. 1. Where was 2? Oh, that one's backwards. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Don't take much. There. Torqued. I'll let this all set. I can really see the numbers, but they're pretty small, and there's 8 and 13 and 10. I can never see 1. And this 2 is backwards. Then 3. There's 5 and 6. 4 is over here. So, yeah, I do have a kickstand I gotta weld up. I got some other work I gotta do. But all in all, it's come together. Just hopefully this is good. That just always makes me nervous. Get the crank in there right, the seals in there right. You know, this stuff all is sealing up really nice where the rotary valve goes, all inside the transmission. So what could go wrong, right? Gonna attempt. Put the pistons on, jugs and stuff, get everything cleaned up. Try to oil things up the best that I can. Just making sure my exhaust is heading towards the exhaust side of the cylinders. This was my right hand piston before. I maybe screwed that up a couple times in this video, saying left and right, just the way it's been sitting here. A little strange when it's not in the bike. But these have had a hard time lining up. Give it a little spin, make sure it's seated in the groove. Now, might as well do the other side. Tight, and they push through. I don't know why I struggle with this so much. Left my other clip over here. just like that. I do have new base gaskets here. Stick those on, slide the cylinders over. I'm gonna grab a little bit of stuff to clean this up the rest of the way first. Got my gasket on there, oiled up the skirts, rolled up everything else. Piston should be nice and clean. Doesn't look that great from here, but these were the old pistons and had good compression. And pistons and rings are hard to get a hold of, so this one's just going to get the old ones back in. This does have locators for the rings, which is nice. As long as I get oil in the rings. Kind of cover these up. These should slide right on. Pretty straightforward. Give the rings a little pinch. What it is, sometimes they just don't want to go. That one's there. My other cylinder. Oil on the skirts. Oil on the bore. Straighten out that piston. There. If I hold my cylinders, should go up and down pretty nicely. I'll clean up my heads. They got new head gaskets. I'll put those on there, and I should be able to set the engine back in the bike and dress out the rest of the stuff. Now I have my cylinders on, head's cleaned up. So I put them on, little Bridgestone symbol that heads towards the front of the engine or towards the exhaust ports. I do have my new head gaskets on there. Slide right on, it's no problem. Same thing here. Do have my head gasket, little Bridgestone symbol. That carbon's all cleaned out. These are just the heads that were on there. So I'll go back on there, the washers and the nuts. So I get this kind of tightened down and sealed up in case I got to walk away for a while. Washers on. Two. 3 and 4. Keep those sit down there. Now, these will end up getting finger tight and they go down to 140 inch-pounds. Just want to get them started. I don't know if they were a certain direction at one point or not. these four. Trying to get all my parts back in one place. Feels good to clean things up a little bit. The wider wheel, and this isn't any car show type restoration or anything. I just want to get back to a good rider, because the rest of the bike could use plenty of attention, but that's not what I'm doing with it for right now. I just want to be able to get out and use it. So I figured this one sat for a really, really long time with a locked up engine and off the road, so I probably have 1,500 miles on this one so far. And like I said, it ran really good. After I got the points and the transmission freed up, new tires, tubes, oil tank, lines, that sort of thing. And then one day I was out riding around, and sure enough, it just kind of lost power, and it'd rev up nice, but it wouldn't idle anymore, and then it wouldn't start, and you had to push start to get it go, so that's pretty much a telltale sign that I lost compression for this. And when I got the cylinders off, I obviously didn't blow it up. So once I got the can or the crank out, it's pretty obvious that seal was shot. So I'm just going to hand tighten these, snug them up. I'm going to start at about 100 inch-pounds on these. Why is this socket going so hard? That's 100. Bump it up to 140. Maybe we'll do 120 first. So when I put the engine back in the frame, I put the dress up the sides of it, because I just can't get the cylinders on and off over the studs inside the frame. It's just like you're a 1/4 inch away from doing it. That's why I'm gonna get this all put it in, and I'll slide right in there. So here I'm at 140. It's nice that these studs aren't pulling out like the last engine I did. The studs were out of it when I got the bike out of storage. And come to find out, there's a reason why all the head studs are pulled out, because they would not stay tight. So yeah, this should pretty much have compression. Yeah, I'll never be able to turn this now. I'll take the plugs out later and spin around a little bit, but next step, get my other pieces together and ready to go back in the frame. A little progress update. Get ready to put the side rotary valve cover on. I did line up the valve with where it says left side. There's a pin on the crankshaft. The other side is the same thing. As you got that cover on. This is a seal that I replaced a while back. I mean, there's new O-rings here on this cover. There's an O-ring behind here for the oil pump. Come from the other side. That was all new. So I just kind of left that stuff since they're kind of hard to get. So, and my little ring on here too. Don't want to forget that when I put the case on. I am getting the oil pump ready. That gear in there. It's all cleaned up. I got a new gasket for around there. So I'll put new lines on here too, just once I get it closer into the bike. I got to run to the parts store and grab the puller for that fiber gear so I can get that off and get this one replaced. But this side rotary valve, I'd put this seal in. That was all new. This O-ring was new. So there's just one locator pin. So I got this all oiled up. Hopefully this slides right over the top. Just like that. Put a couple of screws in. That's right, that's the oil pump one. Cinch that on. There. I'll slide that oil pump on, and then that'll kind of be it for right now. I'm going to start putting the clutch and crank gear on, getting that timed. That'll be my next little shot. Just got the bike timed. Put my clutch on. There's a little peg down in the clutch basket. Lines up with this gear, along with, there's a marker with pen because it's really hard to see, or with marker, because there's a small hole dimple on the crankshaft. Same thing with on the clutch basket. And getting that stuff all lined up, I did pull this gear off, which actually I broke one. I had to get one off of a spare to take this out because the oil line that feeds this side, you know, just replace that for safekeeping. So this is that oil line. It says it's all, the old stuff is all brittle, but it goes underneath the generator, so that's kind of a pain. I got to replace this one yet. I try to put these little caps on here and little things in between, but yeah, it's slowly coming together. Put the oil pump in. I just put oil in the oil pump, just one little gasket on there. That one has just, let's put some 30 weight in there just for keep this lubed up because there's a little gear that runs around. So when I get this line off, I'll put a battery charger on. I'm gonna hook the wires up and just make sure that my timing is right. So I'll pull the points cover off before I button it up too far, but I'll probably put the side cover on. So I had the gasket sitting on overnight. Use a little bit of grease. There's my little dimple for the clutch, which I've forgotten several times in the past. It's not fun. I should just take that brake lever off, but I don't. Come on, you really want to go in. Getting close. Let's see, it's just hung up on the shaft a little bit. Gotta get that straight without wrecking the seal. There. Just tighten up a couple of these screws. these to get started. I'll run my choke or my clutch cable back down through. Get that lined up, make sure the clutch is doing clutch things before I put any oil in, if I'd like to get some oil in the transmission sooner than later. Go through and double check all these, my drain plug, before I start dumping oil in. I'm sure I have a ton of oil in the, I primed that oil line on the other side, so the carburetor goes into, I'm sure that's even more full oil, which is totally fine by me. But so far, so good. I mean, the engine turns over nice. So, goes in the gear, sprockets move. So I'm going to do a little bit more here and get back with you. Just working on the exhaust put back on. Got my clutch mechanism all set up and adjusted. Just set my carburetors on. I do have premix in the tank, oil in the tank, batteries charged. I hooked up my last couple wires for the battery. So this hooked up, my oil line hooked up. I primed the two lines, talked about that before. This is my neutral. The wire's a little bit off because I had to solder that on years ago, but that's all good. These are all on. My dome light should be, or my neutral light should work. Battery's good. I just set this exhaust kind of here. But what I really want to do is get this side on. You kind of see where we're at. Bolt it on here. There. Now, I'm going to work on these joints a little bit. I got a plan for that, but I kind of get this set back together. It snowed last night, so I got plenty of time do some of those final touches. So I have to get the engine fired and see what. There's a right and the wrong way for these or not. Usually they fit one way. These are new gaskets and they got a little bit of a felt on them. I can't get my fingers in there ever. This one's tightening up really nicely. This one's a little bit crooked. I think I'm ready to fire for the first time here. I do have oil in the transmission. It's coming out the drain plug there. The battery's charged. Premix. I'll turn the gas on in a second. Do have the plugs in. Exhaust is tightened up. Oil pump is hooked up. Turn the gas on. Don't remember here, I can see gas going down the lines. This kind of has to go uphill a little bit. I'm going to turn the key on. See if I have gas coming down there. Never loved my gas delivery on this one. Let's just give it a kick and see what happens. Battery's on. Hopefully I don't tip it over. Choke it. Ooh, there we go. Bubbles that come through the oil pump, so that makes me nervous. It's really smoking. I just want to idle it and run these oil bubbles through. This one doesn't take long, it's super short. We're all staying here for 2 or 3 minutes. Kick it into gear actually. It has to be like this for a little while. Hopefully the oil's swinging around inside the transmission. Of course, it's nicer out to be outside doing this. I think this side's probably getting oil now. That wasn't a bad first start. Got both cylinders. It idled. It wasn't doing that before with that seal out. So far, so good. Boy, does that feel good to have that back running again. I had a lot of buttoning up and cleaning up to do, but that's long and short of it. do this without knocking it down. Perfect. Go outside for the first time. Let it warm up a little bit. Looking good so far.